was assumed that the progress in the West was the cutting edge of progress, and that's all one needed to attend to. However, and it was only after when I was within a month of getting my doctoral degree that by chance I happened to come upon Aldous Huxley, The Perennial Philosophy, which, of course, takes in the scope of mysticism. It's basically a book on mysticism, but it covers the waterfront. And that opened my eyes. And when I hit mysticism, which, again, my teachers didn't have much feeling for, it connected with me instantaneously. And I found myself saying from the soles of my feet right on up, yes, yes, this is the way it is. And I've never deviated from that conviction. And then it was through getting to know Aldous Huxley and his friend Gerald Hurd and finding that they in Los Angeles were involved with the Vedanta Society there that I thought, my word, there is gold in the rest of the world. And since then, I have been pursuing 7 other religions for not quite, sometimes up to a decade each one, to try to encompass as much as one's lifetime can the great wisdom of the world.
I think you had said that it was the Katha Upanishad that brought the light to you about Christianity.
You have a very good memory, Michael. That's right. I was at the time that I was with Huxley and Hurd about to move from Denver, University of Denver, to Washington University in St. Louis. And I can still remember one of them saying to me, "You're going to St. Louis? There's a very good Swami there." Swami? I'm not sure I knew what the word meant then, but I was hanging on to
this would have been, what, in the 1940s or 50s?
This would have been 1948. But I was hanging on their every word. My regard for them was so high. So they even knew his name, Swami Sattvaprakasananda of the Ramakrishna Vivekananda order. And so I wrote it down, and a week after we arrived, when furniture was in order and so on, I looked it up in the phone book, went, called, and found out there was going to be a study group that evening, 8 to 9:30, and it was in a little apartment, so I sought it out. And on the way out, there was a table, and the study, it was sort of like Bible study, but using the Hindu text. And the Swami was speaking and discussing verse by verse the Katha Upanishad. So I picked up a copy from the book table as I went home, and before I went to bed, I opened it. And I've often said that along with Huxley's The Perennial Philosophy, in team with one of Gerald Hurd's books, the Katha Upanishad was the other of the 2 most important reading experiences of my life. Because by the page 2, I was just astonished at how much truth of a profound nature could be crowded into just a few paragraphs.
What was the other reading experience?
Well, the other reading experience was a book by Gerald Hurd, which led me to Huxley, because those 2 were both Englishmen, expatriates to America, and I'll tell you the book, but I don't often do it because I can see that it could raise false expectation. The book was titled Pain, Sex, and Time. And I was at that point working at the University of California writing my doctoral dissertation, and I came to the problem of pain. So I went to Wheeler Library and looked under the card catalog and went home to my rented room in a rooming house with 3 books and on pain, and after supper I looked at them, and somehow this title, Pain, Sex, and Time, looked more interesting than the other title, and so I started reading, and by page 2 I realized it had nothing to do with my doctoral dissertation, but I kept on reading. And that's the only time in my life I have read through the entire night. And when dawn was breaking and I closed the book finally, my whole worldview had changed from the naturalism, scientific naturalism that the University of Chicago and Berkeley had indoctrinated me into the mystical view of the world.
It's interesting, I'm thinking how often Vedanta tends to be a gateway for people from the West into the Eastern philosophy. It's almost like somehow Ramakrishna and Vivekananda set up this field of energy. Because I hear this story over and over again of people discovering the East through Vedanta.
Yes. That's true. Everything you say there is true. It presents the basic structure of the world's wisdom in very straightforward and comprehensible terms.
Yes. And Ramakrishna himself, of course, tested out all the traditions, or at least a number of them, to check them out and see, well, can I do the same thing I did with Kali here? And he found that he could.
Wonderful memory, that amazing individual, Ramakrishna.
What would you say Ramakrishna was? How would you describe him?
Well, it's not often I've been answering questions so much that I get stumped, but to describe him, because he was a number of things, he was oriented to the transcendent so palpably. Of course, in his time, and he wasn't educated, though he picked up a lot of knowledge, but there was no scientific worldview to challenge his deeply. But it wasn't just his, well, it was his intuitive knowledge, and in the way that just took over his life, and then all the rest came out so winsomely, so humorously. He had this gift of teaching that could remind one of Jesus and of Buddha and so on, to get his point across in a phrase, in a story.
I should say that he lived in the late 19th century in India, and we know these words and these phrases because he had a recorder who sat there and took down his words verbatim, which became the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna.
Kind of a Boswell of the spiritual world, and I don't know that we have another instance of that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, pretty amazing. And then Vivekananda was his chief disciple, who was then sent off by him to America, and the rest is history.
That's right.
Yes. Well, I'm thinking, you've been such a bridge between Christianity and other great traditions, and also from the west to the east and to the north and the south in many instances. I'm thinking of another bridge, and that's Thomas Merton. And you had the opportunity to spend a week with him in India. Tell us about that, when and how that happened.
Oh, a great joy to get my memory back into that week. It was in Calcutta. There was a conference involving the leaders from the world's religion, and I had first turned it down, but when I found out that Thomas Merton was going, why, I changed my mind instantly. And so we had that week together, and things fell out in a way where we were able to spend a good bit of time together.